Hello, everyone. Happy New Year's. We are so happy to be here. We're here with Mel, our head of product. And today we're going to discuss about some really interesting insights from our latest market intelligence tool.
Yes, we are. So I'm really happy to be here and to show you one of our latest features, market intelligence, which I think you can get some really great insights out of.
Cool. So let's get started.
Woohoo. Okay, so as we said, today we'll be presenting you our new market intelligence feature. So just a quick word on what is market intelligence and how you can use it. The idea is that with our market intelligence, you can create a market. So you select a set of countries that you want to study and a set of categories. And then we show you a series of insights on that market as a whole. So on that group of countries and group of categories. And so you can compare, for instance, what are the top performing apps in across the different countries of your market. Or, for instance, it's great to detect trends as well, to track like seasonality, and they see, okay, which categories are most affected by seasonality and at what time, for instance.
That's interesting. And why are seasonalities important?
Yeah, so you definitely want to keep track of seasonality because it can really have a direct impact on your app's performance and on your app downloads, for instance. Okay. And so when you're reporting your app downloads or your app performance, you want to make sure that you separate what is really due to your team's marketing effort and what is actually due to market seasonality. And it's actually very interesting that we're doing this now because the months of December and January, they actually have very high seasonality for some categories. And so if your app is in one of those categories, you definitely want to be aware of that so that you know what is really due to the seasonal trend and what is actually due to your app performance.
Okay, cool. So what do you think if we take a look at it?
Yeah, let's go. Okay, so let's get started. So as I just mentioned, what we want to show you guys is the importance of understanding seasonality of a specific market. So I'm going to illustrate with a few examples. So right now I'm in the market intelligence interface of AppTweak. I'm going to create a market. So I'm just going to hit here the new market. I can choose the store I want to study. So I'm going to stay in iPhone here and I'm going to choose free. In the countries, so this is where you can actually select multiple countries. So you can go and select North American countries, South America, Europe. I'm just going to hit the US right now. We'll be studying markets with more countries later on in the webinar. And then in categories, I'm going to select a couple of categories. And these are the categories that I want to compare. So I did my homework, actually. So I kind of know that these categories are very interesting to look into in December. So I'm going to check business, I'm going to take sports, and I'm going to take the travel category. I hit next, and then here all I have to do is name my market. So I'm just going to put seasonality trends, choose a color, and then I can hit confirm, and my market is created. It then appears down here in my dashboard, and then let's have a look, and I'm going to shortcut here and go directly to market seasonality. Let's wait for this to load. And so the first thing that we see in this view is the global market seasonality. So that's the seasonality of that is across all these three categories. Now, in this particular case, that doesn't have a lot of sense, but this is going to have a lot of sense when, for instance, you want to look at the seasonality of the business category across the whole Europe. And so you'll be able to see seasonality for that category across a market as a whole. And then if I scroll down, this is where I'm interested in. Here I can see the seasonality details per category. And so we have the yearly trend over here. I have the weekly trend here. So what first thing I notice here is there's a big difference between business and sports, for instance. Sports is a category that has a high seasonality, a high boost in average daily downloads during the weekends. So typically apps that are in the sports category, they tend to see a peak of their downloads during the weekends. Whereas business, they tend to see a drop of their average daily downloads during the weekends and a peak during the week. That seems pretty logic. But what I'm interested here is in the yearly trend down here. And what I can see here is that over the different years, over the whole year, the December is a month where there's a big drop in average daily downloads for all three categories. You see this big drop here. And if I put my mouse over here, I can see that basically apps in these categories are expected to have a drop of between minus 13% and minus 19% in average daily downloads. When you come to think of it, that's actually quite logical. So, for instance, the sports category really slows down during the winter break. That's because there's not that many sports events as there is during the whole rest of the year. For the business category, well, many companies shut down during Christmas. It's the holidays, and so business kind of slows down in general as well. And when you come to think of it, for the travel category, I was a bit surprised to see that drop at first. But it's actually quite logical because in the travel category, there's a lot of hotel applications. And people during Christmas, they tend to travel around, but to visit their families. So they're not staying in hotels that much, at least not as much as they would be during the summer vacation, for instance. And also, since lots of business are closed, there's also a lot less business trips, much fewer business trips. And that also kind of slows down the average daily downloads that one can expect in the travel category. Now, not everything is slow during December. So let me just switch to another market that I created here. So I'm going back to my dashboard and I'm going to hit this market that I created beforehand, which shows which compares the categories games and entertainment in the US. Again, I'm going to go to market seasonality, wait for this to load. And then here I can scroll down. And again, I can compare the weekly and yearly trend of the categories game and entertainment. Interesting to see that here the weekly trend is very similar. So both categories know kind of a slowdown during the week and a peak during the weekend. Obviously, people during the weekend are looking to have fun. And so they're probably looking to entertain themselves, play games. So that's kind of expected. When we look at the yearly trend, we can see here that totally opposed to what we saw for the other previous categories, here we have a big peak in December. And it's interesting to see that entertainment apps can actually expect a boost of their average daily downloads of up to 20% during the end of the year. Again, it's the holidays. People are there to entertain themselves. They want to have fun. And so that's why entertainment apps can kind of expect a nice boost there. So again, in terms of ASO, this is all very important to capture because it can help you kind of make a difference between what is really due to your marketing efforts and what is due to seasonal trends. It's also good to know if you want to prepare your app beforehand. Obviously, if your app is in the entertainment category, you want to make sure it's ready and it's fully optimized before the month of December because December is like a really hot month for those apps in that category. Okay, so now I'm back to my dashboard, and this time I'm going to create a market that looks at different countries at once. So I'm going to hit the new market. I'll stay on the iPhone, and then in the countries, I'm going to hit United States. In South America, let's take Brazil. In Europe, I'm going to go for France, Germany, and the UK, and then we can take a big Asian country. Let's go for India. Next is a category. So this time I'm going to go and study the health and fitness category. It's pretty known that the health and fitness category has very high seasonal trends in January. So let's have a closer look into that. So I'm going to pick a color. Let's go for the green, which looks nice and healthy. And then I'm going to put health and fitness here. And then hit confirm to confirm my market. So there it is. Again, let's jump to the market seasonality trend. Wait for this to load. And again, this is when it becomes really interesting, this global market seasonality, is that I can really study the seasonality of health and fitness apps across all these markets together. And so what I see here is in the weekly seasonality shows here. So we can see that generally, actually, that's quite surprising that people tend to use health and fitness apps during the week more than during the weekend. And if we look at the yearly trend, which is what we see here, we see that it starts off really high. And that's because I can see there's an impressive plus 27% here. So health and fitness apps tend to have a boost in the average daily downloads of 27% at the beginning of the year. When you come to think of it, it's kind of cliche, but it's like, okay, we've just finished Christmas. We did a lot of partying, a lot of eating. And people are setting their good resolutions as they want to start the year with a nice, fresh, healthy start. And so probably the first thing they do is they download a health and fitness app and then they start their program to get fit or to get healthy. Now, if I scroll down, I can actually study these different seasonality trends across the different countries. And so I can see here, for instance, that this weekly trend is actually quite different from one country to another. For instance, I can see that the countries where there's the biggest drop during the weekend is in the US and in Brazil. So let me just unselect the others so that you can have a clear view. And so you see here, there's really a big drop in seasonality, a big drop in average daily downloads in the US and in Brazil during the Sunday and Saturday, and it kind of peaks up during the week. If I select the other countries, I actually see a reverse trend. So here we see it's actually quite more stable across week and weekends. If we look at the yearly trend, let me reselect US and Brazil. Again, we can see here that there's a big boost in these average downloads in January, and that's especially high in the UK and in Germany. In the UK, it goes up to 47%, which is huge. However, in India, the boost is only of 4%, so it's actually much lower. And so again, that kind of gives you an idea of how to adapt one strategy across these different countries to meet the seasonality trends that can be actually quite different from one market to another. So that's also something that's very interesting and very important to take into account. So that's it for the seasonality trends, but obviously there's much more to show on the market intelligence feature. So I'm going to go back to my health and fitness market that I was just showing you previously. I'm just going to click here. And the first thing that we see here is the top charts. So this feature is actually really interesting to kind of see, okay, if you're studying the health and fitness market, what we're going to do here is we're going to compare, okay, across these different countries, what are the top performing apps in health and fitness category. So the first thing I see is that across the countries, US, Brazil, France, Germany, UK, and India, the top leading apps are 30-Day Fitness, Calm, and Flow Period. If I scroll down here, I actually have the detail for each country. And it's interesting to see here, I'm highlighting 30-Day Fitness. It's amazing to see that this app has actually managed to be in top 5 position for all 6 of these countries, and it's number 1 in 4 out of 6 of these countries. So that's pretty amazing. If we look at Calm, again, here we can filter here and see, okay, Calm is in the top 10 positions for all of these 6 countries. So these are really big health and fitness applications. Another interesting one here is Yazoo. So I'm just going to click here on Yazoo. We see here that Yazoo is actually quite present and very present in Brazil, France, Germany, but it's really lagging behind in actually English-speaking countries such as the UK, the US, and even in India. Now, if we were Yazoo, let's say, okay, we want to now start targeting this English-speaking market. So then I can actually jump here to downloads to top. And this is a really amazing feature that I love. It actually shows you how many downloads we estimate an app needs to make in a specific category, in a specific country, to reach a specific position in the top chart. So again, if I'm Yazoo, I'm in the health and fitness category, I can see here how many downloads, how many average daily downloads I need to make in order to reach top positions in one of these countries. The first thing that really jumps to our eyes here is that the US is way more competitive than any other of these markets that we've selected. So if I look at the different levels here, every time you want to reach a specific top, you will need to make 5 times many more downloads to reach a certain top in the US than any other of the countries we followed here. Now, imagine we want to focus on the US or the UK. So let's say Yazoo wants to reach top 10 in these markets. So I'm going to click here and zoom into the top 10. So I see here that we estimate that to be in the top 10 on the health and fitness category in the UK, you need to make about 1,300 daily downloads. In the US, that's much, much more. So you actually need to make about 6,000 daily downloads to be in the top 10 health and fitness category in the US. Okay, so I'm back on my top charts view. So we had a look at what were the apps that were kind of leading, health and fitness apps that were leading across all these 6 countries. But what's also interesting to see in this view, there's also a series of apps that are very specific to each country. And that's kind of like local leaders. So I'm going to remove the dense view here so that we can have a look at what are these apps. But I see here, for instance, in Brazil, there's Drink Water. Let's put back the dense view, which is a very popular app in Brazil, but not so much in the other countries. If I go in France, there's Yuka. Yuka is also a very popular app in France, but again, it's not an app that is available in the other countries. And then if I look at one more, for instance, let's have a look in India. I see that in India, there's Healthify Me. Again, I'm going to dense this view here. Healthify Me, which again, it's an app that's very popular in India, but not so much in other countries. That doesn't even rank in the top charts of other countries. So that's also quite interesting here to kind of identify what are worldwide leaders and what are the local leaders. Because if you're going to launch your app in a new market, you want to know, okay, who are you going to be competing against? And sometimes those competitors can actually be totally different than the competitors that you're used to in your usual markets. So that's also something you really have to take into account when you're launching an app in a new market. Okay, so now that we've kind of had a look at what are the top performing apps in the health and fitness category in these different markets, let's have a look at their market share. So I'm going to go here to the market share section and I'm going to click by app. And here what we see is, the first thing that we see is basically the total market share. So this is the sum of downloads from health and fitness apps across all these 6 countries altogether. And you see here there's a nice positive trend. So it looks like the health and fitness categories, at least in these countries, are growing in terms of total downloads. If I scroll down, I can see, okay, what are the top apps in this market? So what are the health and fitness apps that have the biggest market share across these 6 countries together? And it's pretty surprising here because number 1 is Fitbit. And if you remember well, Fitbit wasn't that visible in the top performing apps in the top charts. So that's quite interesting. And actually, if I look up here, we see the market share history of top apps in the market. And this one here that suddenly goes up and down, that's Fitbit. So that blue one here, that's Fitbit. Really interesting to see that the app has actually known this huge boost in downloads around December. So it's really around the 24th and the 28th of December. So definitely around Christmas. And again, that's probably because people have got a lot of Fitbit bracelets for Christmas. And so obviously they then started to download the app, and that really gave the app a big boost in terms of market share. If I scroll down, the other top apps, well, not surprising, there's Calm and 30-Day Fitness there, which is kind of the same as that we found in the top charts section. Now, let's have a look at these apps by country and their market share by country, because this is their market share across all 6 countries together. But if I scroll down, I can actually have a detail by country. And I can see here that it's actually very different from one country to another. So in Brazil, we have 30 Days Fitness in first results. In Germany, it's Yazio. In France, it's Yuka. And so we really have, for each country, a different leader. Interesting to see, again, that Fitbit is actually the number 1 app in terms of market share in the US and in the UK. And now, just want to show you something very quick here, that I can also go and see the market share by country. So I'm just going to hit market share by country. And this is showing me how in the health and fitness category, the percentage of downloads that come from each category if we sum all these countries together, each country, sorry. And so here, the US is really leader. It takes 64% of download share of these 6 countries. And in second position is the UK, which takes 12% of the download share. So if you put these together, they actually sum up to represent 75% of the total market that we created. So obviously, if Fitbit is number 1 in terms of market share in the US and in the UK, it's automatically going to be number 1 in the market, in the whole market. So again, that's really interesting to see because you can identify local leaders, but you can also identify, well, who is having the biggest weight, because obviously a leading app in the US has much more weight than a leading app in France, which is a much smaller market when it comes to health and fitness, at least, compared to the US.
So I think it's definitely super important to check out for seasonality.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of events that can trigger high or low seasonality. Do you have any in mind that maybe could be worth?
Yeah, sure. So there's always seasonality going on. It really depends from one category to another, but typically events like St. Valentine's Day, that can be the summer vacation. It can be a sports event like the World Cup, or for instance, it can even be Black Friday. These all have an impact on apps in a specific category. So it's really something that everyone needs to know about and to closely monitor as well.
Yes. And then, of course, also if you want to launch an app, it's super important that you study your category, that you take a look at this.
Exactly, because if you're launching an app, or even if you have an app and you're launching in a new market, you definitely want to have a look at, okay, what are the seasonal trends in that market? Sometimes it can be very different from one country to another. But also you want to know, okay, what is the size of that market? How many downloads are you going to need to reach a specific top? It can also be very different from one country to another. And then you want to study who are you going to be playing against? And so probably you'll find some very known competitors that you already know about, but you'll also definitely find some more local leaders that you definitely want to study as well, because they probably really know the market very well as well.
Yeah. And for those of you who are wondering how you can get started, we have some great news.
Sure. So basically, market intelligence is available. It's for all plans, but it does have an extra cost. So the idea is that we calculate the cost in number of credits. And so you can sign up for market intelligence for 199 euros a month, and you have access to 100 credits. Now, just to give you a quick idea of what 100 credits, what does that represent? Well, here for the different markets that I've created for this demo, well, I've used 11 of those credits. So if I create a market here, basically the credits is the number of countries that you select in a market times the number of categories. So I'm going to select some here, and it actually estimates the number of credits up here. So as you create your market, it does show you how many credits you're consuming, so that you're sure to not make any false, overconsume. And in the confirmation step, that it also appears there. And so as a reminder, it's 199 euros per month, and that gives you access to 100 credits. And to create a market, we calculate the credits by taking the number of countries you've added to that market times the number of categories. And just to remember, there are some sample markets that are already available for everyone that you can have a look around and play around with. So the data is there, so you can already have an idea of the kind of data that we're showing.
So thank you everyone for being here. Don't hesitate to reach out and start your free trial, and to come here next time.
Bye.